buy something else, and they just were all over the Mediterranean area buying and selling things. They had great businesses going. And they found out, as they were trading, that they need a way to keep track of all this business, because just like businessmen today, you have to be able to keep track of what you're buying and selling. So they needed to have better business records. So they decided to create a new way to take care of these business records. And at first, they used some of the same kind of hieroglyphics like the ancient Egyptians used. And it worked okay, but then they discovered a problem with this. They found out that one hieroglyph could mean 3 different things. For instance, the leg could mean your leg, or it could mean running, because legs are used for running, and it could also mean swift or quickly, because you run quickly with legs. Now, this is a real problem in business if one symbol can stand for 3 different things. So the Phoenicians, over time, changed the picture words into simple marks. The Phoenicians agreed that one symbol should stand for a certain sound. For instance, a B should stand for the sound B. And the first Phoenicians who used this found out it worked pretty well, so they told more and more Phoenicians. So pretty soon, lots of different Phoenicians are using their letter symbols. And it's very similar to the way in a Montessori school, a child learns with the sandpaper letters what each of the letters stand for. It stands for a certain sound. The Phoenician marks that represented sounds became the very first letters of an alphabet. And then an even more amazing thing happened. The Phoenicians discovered that putting those marks together in certain words made it possible for them to make a huge variety of words. Well, as time went on, the Phoenicians traded with another early civilization that lived in the Mediterranean area, the Greeks. And the Greeks found out about the Phoenician alphabet, and they thought it was just wonderful. So the Greeks decided to use parts of the Phoenician alphabet as the beginnings of their alphabet. And they took the first 2 letters for A and B, Aleph and Bet, and we put them together to make our word alphabet. They actually come from the Greek words alpha and beta. But now the Greeks, over time, as they were using this alphabet, they decided it didn't always work for them, so they made some changes. But overall, they thought the alphabet was a pretty cool thing, and they didn't make as many changes as you might think. They made some. And then the Greeks came into contact with the Romans, and the Romans thought that this Greek alphabet was just wonderful, and they decided, well, they could use it too. So the Romans, like the Greeks before them, used parts of the alphabet, but they made some changes too. And the Romans spread over what is now Europe with their Roman Empire, and they spread their Latin language throughout the Roman Empire because they were a very powerful people. The alphabet spread all over Europe, and it's now the basis for our English language alphabet. Someone writes down a story in the English alphabet, and somebody else knows what those letters and sounds stand for, and they're reading the story from the English alphabet. Well, this new way of writing, making words from an alphabet of letters that represented sounds, became very popular all around the world. And different cultures made some changes, and they made different alphabets to serve their needs. So today there are around 50 different alphabets. Most alphabets have between 20 and 30 letters in them. The English alphabet has 26 letters in it. But not all written languages use an alphabet. The Chinese and Japanese use characters in their writing, and their characters, they can have, instead of having 20 or 30 like we have, they can have thousands of characters in their language. Well, before writing, early humans had many ways to communicate, just like people do today. They could smile and frown and point. They could make gestures. And then they could speak. But when they started writing, humans had a wonderful new way to communicate. They could write words on material, and then another person could read that material. They could pass on words without one person having to speak to another person. They could communicate about people and objects and ideas much more easily, and they could communicate many more details. In some places, the first people to use an alphabet, the first people to learn to read, were the kings and queens and other wealthy people. But gradually, the everyday, ordinary people learned to read and write too. People began to share their knowledge by writing books, and other people read those books. Just like people today, early people were very curious, and they wanted to learn about new things. Writing information in books meant that information could be shared or stored for people to read later. As people passed their knowledge on through writing, it became possible for others to develop their knowledge, and over time, humans shared that knowledge in many marvelous ways. One way humans shared their knowledge was to invent machines. Can you imagine a world today without machines like refrigerators and telephones and computers? But in order for humans to invent things like telephones, computers, and refrigerators, one more very important thing had to be invented. Humans needed to know about numbers. And how numbers began in the world, that's a whole nother story.